and welcome to our show, Brilliant Business Insights. I'm Jen Fredericks, and this is Lori Kuhn, and we're here to help you cut through the workplace BS. Today's topic is the race against time, how to get more hours in your day. Wait, is that even possible?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about how it can feel like you have more hours in your day.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's possible to get more hours in your day, but you can get more done in the hours that you do have. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Efficiency?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Efficiency. Because, as most people see it, like there's not enough time. So it's always, where did the time go? Like it got up and left or something. Yeah, where did time go? Let's go find it because I don't have enough of it right now.
Movie time, New Year's Eve, that comes out. Where's like the clock?
Right.
It's just running around. Okay. Yeah.
So we're looking for that. That's what everybody's looking for. So they can
We're
stop
always
it.
looking for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And so, you hear things like there aren't enough hours in a day. And so I love that because I'm like, so if I could add more hours to your day, like, okay, Jen, you now have 36 hours in the day instead of 24.
Right.
Like, so now work 24 of them instead of 12 or 14.
Wait, no, I can't add extra TV time?
You probably could.
Okay, but most likely
no.
I would add more work.
So in corporate America, we're just going to, oh, great. Now I have 24 hours to work instead of 12.
I can do 2 extra spreadsheets a day.
Right. Do you really want to do that?
No, I don't.
Right. So if I had 36 hours and now I'm working 24, it puts us in that perpetual cycle of, so now I'm working 24 hours because I have 36, but now I want 12 more hours so I can work 48 hours. You see what I'm saying? You never get to that point of having enough time. Or another thing I hear is, if there were 2 of me, I could get more done. And I'm like, really? Like I can barely orchestrate one of me now. If I had to manage 2 of me, like
it would be a lot.
It would be, I'd be off the rails.
I love it, yeah.
But I don't
It
want
might be a lot.
2 of you running around would just be overwhelmed.
Right, yeah.
So when we talk about that, like it's almost like if I could just wrangle down time, like tie it up like a cow in a rodeo and throw it over my shoulder, that somehow my life would miraculously change. Mm-hmm. And that's the feeling I get from people. If I could just control time, I would experience life so much differently.
Time is the cure-all.
Right. And so it's not a time issue. And I always say this to people. It's not a time issue, people. If we had more time, we'd just fill it, run out of it, and end up wanting more of it.
We would just watch more TikTok or Instagram or things that we don't relatively find efficient.
Right.
Or productive. Or
yeah, it's like the 4-hour work week, which I'm going to discuss later. If we have 20 hours to do a project and it's a 6-hour project, we're going to fill that 20 hours with that project. Mm-hmm. And so it's really not about time. So what we want to talk about today, or what we want to help you get past, is the love-hate relationship with time management.
Yes.
And so part of what we'll be discussing today is it's not time management. Rather, it's how do we manage ourselves within time? And so how our perspective shapes our experience of time. Are we really the ones creating our lack of time? And how do we get more hours out of our day, which is what you mentioned before. Sure. It's all about efficiency. How do we get more done within the time we have, without experiencing the overwhelmed side of it and the stressful side of it?
Right. And I would add, outside of like the work life, I also want more time to enjoy and relax and be with other people. And so, yes, it is about efficiency and productivity. However, I don't think that's the end all be all metric of what our life is.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome.
Because that's what, when you hear people talking about and discussing a lack of time, it's always about that aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's always, and so I liken it to like going on vacation. So when you're on vacation, all of a sudden you have all this extra time to do all this really cool stuff, and you fit it all in, and it's never late. And it's interesting because I just came back from this trip, and it was to the French Polynesia in Hawaii, and everybody there says aloha and malaho and Did I?
Mahalo?
Mahalo.
I said it the other way
I
earlier.
know, and that's how. And it's so you hear those words, and it's instantly calm, and nobody there is stressed. Like we were waiting in a line of traffic, and this guy was telling us how he was behind a couple cars, and the light turned green, and then it turned red, and then it turned green again, and the guy in front wasn't moving.
He honked his horn, right?
No, no.
No?
So they got out and went and checked on the guy just to make sure he was okay, and he was fine. He just wasn't paying attention, and then they all started driving. But if you honk, it's because you know somebody and you want to wave.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
so it's interesting. I was in a store and there was a whole line of people waiting to check out. And they're talking to everybody in line and how was your day? And no one's getting frustrated or upset. Everybody in line is calm and chill. And it's like everything happens in its perfect timing there. And it's just a different relationship with timing.
Well, I love that you say that. And it reminds me of something that I try to uphold in my life. But now that I think about it, I don't uphold hour to hour,
Yeah.
which is trust in the perfection of the unfolding.
Yeah.
And that sounds like what they're doing.
Yeah.
All of those interactions, all of that time is meant for something.
Yeah. And the other piece of it is, and what I was realizing this morning, because I've been on a ship for 12 days, is my body's still rocking. And so what happened when I got on the ship, so I wouldn't fall as I was walking down the hallway, is every cell in my body, and this is going into the science part of it that I really appreciate. So every cell in my body adjusted to the rocking of the ship so that I could find a state of equilibrium while walking on the ship. Because if my body didn't adjust each wave, I would now be trying to adjust myself. So your body is always trying to get back to a state of equilibrium, a state of balance, that homeostasis.
Homeostasis, yes.
And so when it comes to time management, when it comes to stress, when it comes to overwhelm, when it comes to addiction, when it comes to depression, when it comes to all of that, our body's always trying to get back to that state of equilibrium. And so if I'm always operating from a frazzled state in relation to time, so now all of a sudden, like, I don't have enough time, and I'm always operating from that state, my equilibrium, my foundation, my state of balance changes. And so I always say this with stress. When you're always stressed, your threshold for stress changes.
Right.
So now my threshold is higher. So now I'm operating from a state of stress that would normally send someone into cardiac arrest has now become my benchmark. And so that's how it is with time. When I'm always operating from that frazzled state out of time, every cell within my body, my new norm has gotten higher. My threshold has gotten higher. So I liken it to being frazzled. So, because when we're and we'll talk about some of this later, but when I'm always operating from that, and we talk about your challenges, so switching hats all the time. So I'm always switching hats, and it's like this bionic state. My
Multitasking and
Right. Or you're running down the hallway with your arms flailing from meeting to meeting, and it's like you do a somersault and you land on your face trying to get to the next meeting, or you're trying to put out all the fires you have at work, with this bird feeder.
Right.
And so we condition ourselves to that state. So now we're doing a lot of stuff inefficiently because that's our new norm.
What I hear you saying is a lot of people liken stress and things coming at you really quickly as like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
And I also hear you saying it the other way too, that when we're running around trying to put out fires with like a little bird dropper, like, what birds drink out of or rabbits drink out of, it's a lost cause. And so that's what I am excited about looking at today are the different perspectives about time. Because if there was a solution to the problem of not having enough time, it would have been solved decades ago.
Oh, absolutely.
Eons ago.
Oh, right.
But what I'm excited about is that you're bringing some different perspectives on how we can have a relationship with time that's a little more different. We're going to have our guest on, Tim Schmidt from Denby Ascent, who's going to talk about some time management strategies and some software and tracking that help as well. And I love that because that's what we do here at BBI. We look at all the different ways to help you remove the BS from work.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about running down the hallway, arms flailing, putting out fires. What other things come to mind for you when we have that frenzied spirit within us?
Yeah. Well, so the piece of it that I was just addressing is we programmed ourselves into that state. And when we're there, we're working out of our sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight.
Right.
And so when you're working from that system, all your reserves are out of your mind, they're out of your brain, and they're
Right.
now going to ward off that stressor. And so you're not as efficient, you're not as productive, you're not as innovative, all those things that go along with working from that fragmented state. And so part of it is reconditioning yourself to work from your parent. To me, time management, stress, all of that is about conditioning yourself to operate from your parasympathetic nervous system, which is that state of calm. And you and I always talk about how when we get stressed and frazzled, it's easy for us to go to calm.
Yes.
Like when I feel overwhelmed, my body instantly goes to calm. And people are like, no way, that's not possible. And it's like, I've conditioned myself in a state of high overwhelm to go to calm. Like that's my natural reaction. And so you can do that with time management, because I guarantee you're going to be more efficient, more productive, and better able to manage time if you can get to a state of calm, which is your parasympathetic nervous system, versus your body's foundation, your body's center of balance being at that anxious state.
Sure.
Because now if my boss comes in and I'm having a good day and I'm getting stuff done and my boss comes in and says, here, I need this by noon, my natural state is I flip back into the overwhelming anxiety, because that's what I have programmed.
Because it's 11:30 when he came in and asked you for that at noon.
Absolutely. And that's my mode of operation. That's where I go to when I feel overwhelmed. So now I'm back in my sympathetic, and now I'm unproductive, I'm frazzled, I'm not thinking straight. And so that's a lot of what we're going to talk about with time management is if you can get from and operating from that state of calm, you're going to be more efficient, like you were saying earlier. It's all about efficiency.
Right.
Yeah. So some of what we're going to talk about is the success portion of time management. How can we be successful when we have limited time? How can we get more done within that limited amount of time? And it's about how we manage ourselves within time. And it's more about your relationship with time. So there are 3 components to this.
Okay.
What are those components?
Well, I'm thinking emotional management. You just mentioned your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, but I also kind of equate that to whatever energy I'm showing up in or holding myself in, and developing more skills to get into your PNS.
Yep, I agree. So how do you do that?
Oh, well, I bet there are several ways to do it, and we'll get into that later. But first, we'd like to welcome our guest, Tim Schmidt with Denvi Ascent. Growing up in Wauwatosa and potentially serving a couple of our local viewers at Left's Lucky Town, Tim's embraced several opportunities to further his career, which has led him to the studio today. Tim spent several years fundraising with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and then moved to New York City, opening an office in New York City, consulting around Salesforce. COVID brought Tim back to Wisconsin, where he helped co-found Denvi Ascent, a time tracking and billing software company. He's a son of 2 teachers, so Tim is naturally gregarious when engaging with his team. He also believes that when consulting or selling software, he ought to be a blessing to the client and foster a trusting relationship. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me. Very nice to hear you. And fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So I'm going to pretend to be Linda Richmond here for a minute from Saturday Night Live and Coffee Talk and say,
Discussing
right, time management, efficient, discuss. No, but really, so one of the things that Lori kept bringing up is this thought of like putting on different hats when you're working and time, when you're looking at time and doing projects. So like, here's a question. Do you believe in multitasking?
Ooh, good question.
I absolutely do not believe in multitasking.
What?
I think it's a big fallacy to think that anybody can just juggle 5 to 10 things and then produce a result that's going to be A+ across the board. The mind really does need to focus on putting out positive results. And the more you divide yourself, the more you divide your attention and the quality of your work. So when people say, "Hey, I'm a master of multitasking," I
Do
let's talk about those short-term
do you
results.
call
They're
BS on
long-term.
that?
Excuse
Yeah.
me?
I said, "Do you call BS on that?" Like,
I definitely do. I
okay.
call it on myself sometimes when I know I'm doing it. Our colleagues talk about it as well when we sit in marketing meetings, how many things we're trying to accomplish because being in a business, being a team member, employee, a founder, you are wearing so many different hats and you know that you can be pulled in so many different directions, but you really have to be mindful of what is the pressing matter that you need to attend to, and then understand that you are going to be doing the minutia of, I need to email these 10 people, I need to push this website to production, but what are these major tasks that I really need to spend and sit down and focus on for about an hour and a half, and then I can check my Slack messages, then I can check my email. Those things will always be there. You're never going to stop communicating, but
Mhm.
there are things that you really need to be mindful to get positive and really A plus results.
I'd like to, and I'm sure there's research out there on this. I'd like to see the stats on multitasking and productivity. Like
Mm.
those who claim they're masters of multitasking, I'd like to see their rate of productivity versus those who are like, nope, I need to focus.
Yeah,
I would
I would
also love to see that. Normally, the only and we've put this out on LinkedIn, right? We try to be thought leaders in what we're trying to produce, but we know we're not the ones with all that information. So we pull from the BBC, Harvard. There are lots of studies that show what is the actual effect and time loss of trying to multitask. And those surveys and studies show that it normally takes the mind about 10 to 25 minutes to do a whole refocus. So I
Oh,
don't know if it was different studies, but the cost of multitasking and efficiency is severe.
That's why I like the idea of time blocking. Uh,
I
I
love time
don't
blocking.
I don't do that yet, and I know that I should, and so maybe I'll make that an experiment in May, because I do find myself flipping between emails and then something someone says in an email reminds me of something I was going to do on social media, reminds me of something I was going to look up for a client, and so I am in that fragmented focus. So I know that I'm not focused at all, and I may feel like I am getting a lot of things done, yet it took me an hour and a half to do those three things I just talked about.
yeah. And I love what you're going to talk about with us today, Tim, because managers and all of the managers and senior executives that I talk with, they're all almost required to be able to multitask. Like that is their job because they're always going from meeting to meeting.
Mhm.
They're dealing with numerous employees all the time. And so how do you focus and actually get what you need to get done when you're managing so many people and you're managing so many meetings and essentially your schedule is, and it's interesting because I was just on a trip with a urologist and he goes from patient to patient to patient that literally have like 10 minutes with a patient. So here you have a doctor that's dealing with life threatening things, and you got to be in and out of these rooms. And now you're telling me it takes 20 to 25 minutes to refocus. That's kind of frightening.
I think it's all a matter of who's actually managing the time. I think the idea of time management actually changes on position and then also the individual and then how they react to that situation's changing. When I think about a founder or a CEO that's bouncing from meeting to meeting or even the urologist, you understand that their time is meant to be fragmented. And a CEO, their job isn't to manage the company, their job is really HR. So they do need to hop from task to task, and then they need time to refocus at the very end of the day to do their own task. But the majority of the time, they're going from situation to situation. But all those situations are kind of tied together. So you're not necessarily changing your mind focus, especially the urologist. They're not going from urology to radiology to surgery. They're really keeping within the same path. So I see that less as multitasking, but more so your natural movement throughout the day of accomplishing these mini tasks that are now actually your regular tasks throughout the day. So time management, time tracking, and that gratification of finishing a task are not necessarily mutually exclusive here.
Well, so then when does time tracking become important to a business?
I think from day one, and that's that's in a couple different avenues. I think when you're selling your time, so I'm a professional services company. We sell SaaS, we bill for time, and a lot of other companies do the same. Photography, advertising. You are literally selling.
Accounting.
Lori, past life, hers was accounting.
So
Yeah,
you're selling your
yeah.
time as a service. So it's not necessarily time tracking per se, because what you're really trying to understand is how much time did I spend to receive a return on investment. Some people sell things for a flat fee. Right, I'm going to photograph your wedding. Well, those are normal, easy parameters to go. I'm going to shoot your wedding for 6 hours. It normally takes me 4 hours to produce a copy, so that's 10 hours of work. But sometimes there are more uh, spurious things that come up and go, oh, well, I needed to actually meet with the bride 5 times. I needed to actually go check out the venue because there's interesting lighting things. So that 10-hour package that you sold that you know you're going to get a particular margin on for your time. Well, what if you actually spent 16 hours on it? You need to really understand how you're spending your time in order to get the correct margin back. And is what you're selling appropriate for the services that you're rendering? Even tax season, I know a lot of people were paying for their taxes. CPAs block their own time as well. Hey Jen, it's going to take me 5 hours to do your taxes. Well, if it takes that person 10, is it going to be a thing that you and your CPA need to talk about next year? Jen, do you still need all these meetings? In which case, then the package is actually now a 10-hour package. It's going to cost you $1,000 instead of the traditional five. So it's really, how do I know that I'm making money in my own business?
Interesting. That does make sense. I'm going to bring up a story that Lori shares a lot because of your background in accounting. And this just blows my mind because I was in a service industry in event production, and we did have to track for different clients, but not at the increments that you
Oh yeah.
needed
Yeah.
to. This blows my mind. Every 6 minutes she had to account for time. How
Yeah,
laborious
every
was
6
that?
minutes. Yeah. Well, what it did is it drove a lot of stress in me. One of the examples I use is I would be in meetings, and if I were in a meeting that I didn't feel warranted my time or they didn't need me in that meeting, I was at a high level of stress because I'm watching each 6 minutes go by going, I need to be billable. Like this is non-billable time for me. And I'm watching the 6 minutes tick away and I'm like, get me out of here. So I became very clear about where I needed to spend my time. So it really helped me if I was invited to a meeting. I'd be like, am I going to add to this meeting? Am I going to add value? What is it that you want me to contribute? So I was very careful about where I spent my time, to the point where I remember being in a personal doctor's appointment and he was like 35 minutes late. And I had mentioned once, after like 15 minutes, I'm like, is the doctor going to be ready soon? And they're like, oh yeah, a few more minutes. And then 10 more minutes passed. And I'm like, do you realize how much it's costing me to sit in your waiting room? I'm like, this is like, I can't be sitting here.
Right.
But I became really efficient with my time that way because I had to know what I was doing every 6 minutes. So that's the flip side of it. When you realize the other side of it, you become more particular about and more efficient with your time.
Right. How do you and Envy Ascent help customers and clients get past like that hurdle of taking the time to manage their time effectively? Like, I know we need to manage our time, but we're so busy we can't take the time. How do you all bring that to them?
That is the $1,000,000 question, and to help me answer it, we'll bring you on to our marketing team. But the short answer is to really talk about mindfulness and how,
What?
yes, yes, um, you really do need to be mindful about your time, and you also need to be honest about what you want your business to be. Time tracking might not work for a small company that's just trying to churn out business because profitability and other things might not be as important because it's a very tribal community. If there's just three of us in an office, it's very easy to understand exactly what's going on and you're just trying to want to grow. But if you're time tracking at the beginning, it really does then help you later on when you're trying to bid out projects. You can really learn from those beginning days of, hey, we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just trying to win clients and serve them the best. So 10 weeks from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, when you've grown from 3 to 10 employees, or you're still at the three, but you're trying to be more strategic about the companies that you want to work with, you have all this historical knowledge to look back on and go, well, Thrive was one of my favorite clients, but actually, we didn't win any good margin with them because we spent so much time on the podcast just talking, and it's all. So I really think it's a direction of where you can take time tracking to be a positive influence on your business. And the last thing I want to say about it is everybody thinks time tracking, a version of time management, is really trying to be Big Brother. Hey, Lori, it's all about your billable 6 minutes. We have to hit that every time. But there are more esoteric and team member centric positive aspects of it. And going, hey, let's understand that there are only 24 hours in a day. And if I see that you're constantly billing 12 hours a day, I love that you're working so much, but maybe that's not good for you. We've assigned some particular tasks to you, and I think it should only take an hour. And I see that you're billing 4 hours for this particular, email management. You're just supposed to send a 30-minute review of the meeting with the client. If I see it's taking that long, maybe those are really good opportunities for education and how we can really improve our internal process. It's not track time, track time, track time. It's how can this help you as a person? How can it help our business make sure we're managing our bottom line? And time tracking is really team member support and being as positive and as mindful as possible.
I have never thought about it that way. I appreciate that perspective. And I had a thought and then it just went away. But no, it's the ability to help people be more strategic and be strategic within trusting the unfolding
Mhm.
of the time.
And that one of the things I thought of too is if you're managing time, and you said there's more to it. There are those ancillary things that we don't think of. How can time management show me that? And I think I heard you say it when you said it's taking you 4 hours to do something that should be taking you two. Can it see so if I'm operating from overwhelm and I'm operating from those emotions that create inefficiencies within me, is that something that your time management can help with? So can you identify those more emotional things going on within your time management tracking?
I want to say it's indirectly, but I really want to hone in on your emotional attractiveness to it because emotion, I think, plays into multitasking and the immediate sense of gratification of I can finish a task or I can do something, right? That email that might not be the most important task of your day, but I can actually put a checkbox to it. I can actually say that I did it. And that sort of gratification feels really good. And I think
Mhm.
that prevents then the major things that you really need to do. So time tracking is an arm of understanding your emotional response to that stimuli of something that I can just check mark and say that I finished it versus what are these bigger concepts and tasks that I need to do throughout the day to really be effective? So we've already talked about time boxing, and there's actually a local company here in Milwaukee called Spirity, led by a individual called Darren Fisher. And I've had the privilege of speaking with him and seeing him at a couple of the MMAC events. And I really love how they talk about time management, not just an idea of time boxing, but they break out year-long goals, quarterly goals, and then they continue to break that down into what are these tasks that I need to do throughout the day that aren't just my menial ancillary emotional responses to what I have to do, but are the major items actually contributing forward to these year-long goals or these monthly goals? So how does my own tracking time contribute to that? So I can have a logical and informative structure of going, I did these small tasks, but I can also see that these big things that I time boxed around, I accomplished. And even though they don't give an immediate sense of gratification, I know that they're leading to something really, really big down the line.
Mhm.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed everything that you shared with us, Tim, and I have one last question for you. What is your biggest tip for people on the personal side of time management?
Ooh, on the personal side of time management.
Yeah.
So I would say first and foremost, don't bring the phone with you everywhere or on your computer when you're walking around. Yeah, I also love my phone, and it's actually next to me right now.
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, right here.
right. Well, we needed to be mindful. We needed to make sure that we were following the time, signing on correctly.
Yes.
But the phone is the biggest distractor. It can pull you in a million different directions. You can just sit down and I think we were talking about TikToks before or something. But I think that's just one of those distractors. So in your personal life, it's still about being mindful. And Jen, we talked about the Beatles just before we got on the show. So I kind of want to tie it back to that real quick. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. But really, that's the sexy way of saying time management. How do you want to give time to others, and how do you want to give time to yourself? So I think that's the underlying thing of all this. Do you love your job? Well, how are you managing your time to do it? If it's a source of stress, put as much effort into making love and taking.
Oh, thank you. I like that perspective, Tim, and I am becoming more and more mindful of the time that I give myself, as I hope a lot of our viewers will start to do, because we all deserve that.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you and ask, what is the best way for viewers to get hold of you if they have some more questions about Dinvi Ascent and how you can support businesses and organizations with their time management?
Absolutely. Well, you can head to dinvy.com, dinvy.com. That has all of our contact information on there. We post on LinkedIn, which is Dinvy LLC, so you can head over to both of those locations. We have our Zoom phone numbers on there as well, so we'd love to talk. We love supporting local. I love coming on to podcasts and other things. So if you invite me to your office for some coffee talk, I'd love to support everybody.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Tim. We appreciate your
Tim.
time. See what I did there?
Yeah.
did.
It was a good use of time. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Maloha.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. Aloha.
Can I
Mahalo.
just say, why did it take me so long to connect mindfulness and time management? Like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Mindfulness.
Yeah.
That's what I'm taking from today.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Right.
It's well, which is your relationship. I mean, when you think of mindfulness, what is that? It's your relationship with time.
Yeah.
It's being mindful of what's going on in that context.
Very true.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What other perspectives do you have on time management?
Well, just other components of it, or recharging regularly. It's just which is being mindful.
Yeah.
Being mindful of where am I at when I'm trying to be productive, where am I at. And I always bring it back to, how are you feeling? What energy state are you in? Is this what you want to be experiencing? Is this how you want to be feeling? It's just, a lot of it is that awareness side of it.
Right.
Where am I? Am I where I want to be? Am I in a state that's going to impact my productivity? Knowing if I'm in my sympathetic nervous system, I know that if I'm in my sympathetic nervous system, I'm not good for anybody. And so what can I do in this moment to reconnect back to my parasympathetic nervous system to get back to that state of calm? And it was interesting because my sister texted me this morning, "Are you home?" Because there were a lot of flights to get here. And I'm like, yes, I am. And I actually have a show coming up very soon, and I'm really calm about it. Like, I put this together before I left, and I even looked at, what am I talking about like today? So it was that late in the hour before I had to reconnect to what I was even talking about today. And I said, but ironically, I'm really calm about it. Like, I had no anxiety, and I'm like, well, this is good. I don't want to get myself into a frenzied state because I know how I operate from that state, and it's never productive. And so I'm just going to stay in this state and trust that it's all going to unfold perfectly, and that I'm not going to get myself worked up about where I'm at right now, because I know that's detrimental to how I'm going to show up and operate.
Right. I also love the permission that we're giving people to question how they're showing up in those moments of you're in a deadline or someone gives you more to put on your plate. Like, you have permission to manage your emotional state first.
Yeah.
You don't have to jump right in to the task that's being asked of you, because, as we're saying, your parasympathetic nervous system will allow you to be efficient, productive, innovative, creative, more than putting on that you're busy, or putting on that you're working very hard on that task that was just assigned to you.
Yeah, because we wear this badge of honor, if I'm busy and I'm overwhelmed, it's like a badge. Oh, I have so much going on.
They'll never fire me if I look busy enough all the time.
Right. If I have to, validate my importance by showing just how overwhelmed and busy I am all the time, so that they feel that I'm valued and needed, and I will never be the first person to go when pink slips go around. And it's interesting because Stephen Kotler calls it being in your flow.
Yeah.
And so that's what I felt like all day today. I just feel like I'm calm. I'm in that place of flow. And the reason why this is so critical, and if you hear anything that we say today, it's McKinsey did a report. And it said that there's a 500%. Now, I had to look this up again because I could not believe it.
Yeah.
But there's a 500% performance improvement while operating in flow. So when you're operating from flow, it always results in peak performance. And so everything we've talked about today is when you're not operating from flow. And so that piece of it's the time management piece. When I know how to manage time, and this is where Tim's company comes in, if I get really good at understanding where my time is going and how to operate more effectively from my parasympathetic nervous system. And so operating and managing my time is that tool that helps me see where I'm spending my time and where I can be more efficient. And then once I have that awareness, I can be more strategic about that aspect of it and how to start spending my time on things that are productive, things that give me focus. And the baseline is operating from my flow to now do those things, because now I see I'm spending too much time here. This time's inefficient. Now I've seen that by using the tool to get me there, Tim's tool, the time management tool.
Right.
So I'm using that tool to show me where I'm inefficient. And then from that, I can start doing those things that are more efficient.
Like, don't Take the time management tool and start beating yourself up for how you were using your time. Use this as an awareness tool to see how you would better like to use your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then using the emotional side of it to start getting back into flow, the mindfulness piece of it. So now I can start doing these things more mindfully and operating from my flow. And as McKinsey says, there's a 500% increase in productivity when I do that. Like I said, I know I had to look it up again too because I was so surprised by it. But so it's doing those steps to get to where we feel like we have more time in our day. We're more productive, we're more efficient, we're more strategic, we're all of those things that all of a sudden I get to the end of my day and I'm like, wow, I checked all those boxes. I got all of this done. I'm not stressed. I'm not overwhelmed.
I'm not drained.
Absolutely. And I have hours at the end of my day to go do those things I want to do, to go surfing or bike riding or watch podcasts or TikTok without watching it going, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be doing this. I need to work. Yeah. And those, so it brings you back to
how our perspective shapes our experience of time.
Yes.
I love a post that I saw by Claude Silver several weeks ago. She's the chief, I love this, the chief heart officer at VaynerX with Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yep.
And she was on LinkedIn talking about burnout. And so anytime I see burnout, I start to think of the work that I've done with compassion fatigue and compassion resilience and all of those things. And she made a great point that it's about energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the time. It's about your energy management. And when we're able to take more control of our emotions, our energy, our parasympathetic nervous system, we can improve the quality of our energy regardless of the external pressures we're facing, which is sort of what we just talked about, like giving yourself permission of those awarenesses and then moving forward from there once you're back in your flow. So it's all about emotional regulation. And she mentioned that 99.99% of the time, we're aware that we tend to perform best when we're feeling positive energy, but we're not always in that headspace and our performance dips. And it's a fact. So being able to read and regulate energy is like going to the gym, she mentioned. And we talk about this too. Intentional growth requires deliberate practice. Mm-hmm. Creating systems and rituals for ourselves when we know we need a pick-me-up, like a walk, deep breathing, trying to change any negative narrative we have in our head about ourselves will help us be more efficient, productive, innovative, creative. Like you said, like take those moments to realign and step back into your flow and then move forward from there.
And what I hear in all of that is what I addressed earlier. Mm-hmm. It's changing our baseline.
Yeah. Yep.
And so when you've established a baseline that your relationship with time is this heightened stress state, whenever I feel crunch for time, I'm going to jump back into and operate from that heightened stress state. But if I'm managing my energy and I can get my energy management and have my baseline be the parasympathetic nervous system, that calm state, now when the boss comes in and says this is due by 12:30, you drop into that calm energetic state and now you can get more done in that amount of time because you're thinking clearly, because you're calm, because you're able to be, because your reserves are no longer going to combat the stressor, but your reserves are going into solving the problem, being more efficient and effective and innovative.
Great. And I'm going to invite the viewers to, if you're hearing this and it's making sense, that's wonderful. That means that you're like cognitively getting it. So how can you allow it to drop in and how can you start to practice it so that it becomes part of your baseline?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was thinking about it today, it felt like there were three parts to me. And so the first part is the awareness piece. And so
it's always the awareness piece.
It's always the awareness piece. So my boss comes in, I'm immediately, holy crap, I got to get this done. I mean, that's how your system feels. It just feels like this overwhelmed state. It's like, okay, how do I want to feel when I'm doing this? I want to feel calm. Okay, how do I get to the calm state? So get to the calm state. Okay, what is my strategy? And, I say get to the calm state, and people are like, well, that's easy for you to say. It's a practice.
It is.
And so I'm not saying you're going to, okay, get to a calm state. I'm calm. When you learn that skill, and so that's where we come in, that's a skill that can be developed. When you're in a state of overwhelm, you can drop to a state of calm like that. But it is a skill you have to develop. So you get to the calm state. And then what's my strategy? I have a half an hour to get this done. What can I do to get this done the most effectively? Do I need someone else to be part of this? Do I need to, maybe it isn't mine, maybe it's somebody else's responsibility, but get clear on, what is my strategy for getting this done? Is it in the right place? Am I the right person to be doing this? And just really take that minute of pause to reflect on the strategy for getting this done. And then the third piece of it is the execution state, because now I'm calm, now I have the strategy around it, and now I can execute it. And so what does it look like for me to execute this?
Right.
Yeah, from
Awesome.
that mindful, that parasympathetic nervous system state. And so some books we have that offer more support on this and dive more deeply into it. The 4-Hour Work Week. I love this. Some people don't. Like everything, read it with discernment and take from it what benefits you and what helps you, because not every book has everything in it for everybody, but there are some really good things in here that help you with that. The other one is 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. Another
For mortals,
for mortal, yeah.
It's written for me.
It's right. Another good book, just interesting perspectives in it. Again, read it with discernment. Just some things to get you to start thinking differently about time, because when I know when I discuss, I can be in a room of 20 executive women and I bring up time and I can just see the expression, on there.
Yeah.
That's when I get the, if there are only 2 of me, if, it just goes into that state of overwhelm.
The magical thinking and state of overwhelm.
Right. Right. So is there anything else Jen, when you think of, time management and what that means and looks like for you, is there anything else that comes up?
I would have to say my relationship with time now is very different than it was when I was in the corporate world. And I'm not putting that on the corporate world at all. I'm putting that on my perspective on time and what I needed to do to look like, feel like I was being efficient and productive and an asset. And that was more of the frenzied focus. That was the multitasking. That was walking down as fast as I could the hallways to get from meeting to meeting. That was like, as soon as the meeting's done, jumping up. Did not feel good, because then I went home and I wasted more of my time feeling drained and dealing with physical ailments of burnout and tiredness. And now my time management strategy is much more kind of on the flow side, I would say. And some people would say that my idea of coming in late sometimes to something and then using the expression, thank you for waiting for me, instead of, I'm sorry I'm late. But I read that in an article somewhere, and it really changed the way that I walk into rooms if I'm late. I am really going to practice fitting the most amount of things I can into a moment, but not overdoing it. And that's what I tend to do in life.
Yeah.
And that's why I run late. And that's why I say thank you for waiting for me. But I really want to work on being more mindful about what I allow into my day and into my idea of what's productive and efficient in that day, and really walk forward from there, while trusting in the unfolding of the day.
Yeah. And I always think of it in terms of the less time I have, the less time I have. And so it goes back to, again, the relationship with time. Like if my relationship with time is I never have enough of it, that's how I'm going to experience it.
Right.
If, like you say, everything's unfolding perfectly and whatever I got done today is what I needed to get done, I'm going to experience that side of time. So
and I love that side of time. And then I always just say, well, time is simply a human construct.
Yeah.
And people don't like that either.
Right. Right.
But sometimes I kind of believe that. I'm like, what is time? Let's get philosophical on that another time.
Yeah, but it does. And just one more thing I want to say quickly: when you're on vacation, you always have enough time.
You do,
right?
Yeah, until you're boarding the plane to come home.
Right. And then when you're at work, you never have enough time. And so, is it in fact my perception of time?
So what I hear you saying is that people at work should view it as they're on vacation, and then they'll always have enough time at work to get done what they want to get done.
Also it goes back to where are you operating in time from? Are
Exactly.
you operating in your stress state, or are you operating from your calm state?
Right.
Because that's going to influence everything else
Right.
within your time. But thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Jen. Thanks to our guest, Tim Schmidt from Dinvey Ascent. Thank you to John Taylor with Milwaukee Video. He's mkevideo.com. He's our producer. He's our set. He does everything for us. We really appreciate it. If you would like to be on video or do podcasts or shows or vodcasts or shows, speak with John. He's a guru when it comes to this sort of thing, and we love everything and appreciate everything he does for us.
Yes.
Thank you, Jen, for co-hosting today.
Thank you, Lori. It's great to see you back here in the States. And we just want to say, join us next time for Brilliant Business Insights, getting you where you want to go, feeling the way you want to feel, and being who you want to be by what, Lori?
Removing the BS.
Removing the BS.
Thanks, everyone.